Welcome to How to Trust Your Intuition, the podcast, the place where we learn that trust is earned and not given, even with ourselves. I'm your host, Betsy LaFay. I'm a social worker, turned award-winning psychic medium, turned intuition teacher. And my school, Trust Yourself Intuition School, celebrated its 10th anniversary in 2023. Join us each episode as we interview thought leaders and luminaries in every genre. They talk about how and when they learn to trust their intuition. Most say they're still learning. What happens when they do trust it and what happens when they don't. Stick around as we all walk together down the road towards trusting our intuition. Welcome back, everyone, to How to Trust Your Intuition, the podcast. Of course, we've got a new name, a new season, and I am so excited about every single guest that we have in the lineup this season. Today, we're starting off with Kareen Walsh, and she is in real life Wendy Rhodes from the show Billions. If you haven't seen the show, it's incredible. On the show, Wendy is an in-house performance coach to a billionaire, an extremely tough job. Now, in real life, Kareen is also a performance coach. She helps C-suite leaders in any industry align what they love with what they do every single day. I really enjoyed my time with Kareen. Now, when you listen, or if you happen to be on YouTube and watching, you will be infected with her amazing and contagious energy. She's great. Something I want to share from my experience with this interview. So at the time of this taping, I happened to be on a medication, prednisone. Many of you might be familiar with that drug. I had hives and I was on it for a week. One of the side effects of prednisone could potentially be wild mood swings. It can cause depression. It can cause euphoria. The week that we taped and I was on it, I was aware of these potential side effects. And as a result, I really shifted down to basically like first gear. The only thing on my plate that week was to take really good care of myself, basically with the exception of this interview. Previous to the taping of this, the day before, I had experienced a down and out depression for about 3 hours. And this was clearly chemical. It was a reaction to the drug. During this time, since I was prepared for it, I was able to make my way through, and I really had to lean on all of my skills that I've built up over the years: spiritual, therapeutic, psychological, self-help, self-care, everything. And I made it through. It's only about 3 hours. The only other time I had one of these chemical dips of depression was actually during my interview with Kareen. Interestingly enough, there's almost no one else that I would rather have this dip with than interviewing her, because she's so amazing. There's at one point during the interview where I'm just like, you are so buoyant, you are so courageous, you tell it like it is, yet you're filled with unconditional love. And I meant it. I mean it. One of the things that I think many empaths or many people are used to is masking, which may be like you feel one way on the inside, yet you're expressing another way on the outside. Well, this is times 1,000 for someone on the autism spectrum who happens to be female, who happens to be queer. This is something that when people like me say, hey, I'm on the autism spectrum, we tend to get the responses of like, no way, you don't present like that at all. And it's because of this masking. It's actually really good, quote unquote, acting that I'm not so proud of, but it was a function of survival up until very recently. And now I'm sort of undoing that. Somebody found out about this and she was like, but that sounds exhausting. And I'm like, yes, it absolutely is exhausting. When I'm not on camera, when I'm not in public, I am singing crazy nonsensical songs, top of my lungs, pretty much constantly. I've got verbal tics. I've got, well, they're not tics, they're stimming, verbal stimming like I will also physically stim, things like that. And those are things that give me energy and release energy when I need to. Anyways, that aside, I am still so good at masking that when I was editing this episode, I was trying to figure out this 20-minute period where I was freaking out by the expression on my face. Because, I'm interviewing someone, so she's doing a lot of the talking. I couldn't even tell. There was like little kind of, I was like, oh, maybe that's the time. We taped this maybe a month or two ago. And my freak out was all about how I looked horrible. I was like, oh my God, my hair is so flat. I hate my background. I hate my angle. The lighting's terrible. And I was using all the skills that I have to stay present, and it was relatively easy with Kareen. Again, being in her presence was the best thing I could have asked for. But to my own surprise, two things. One, I can't really tell when I'm going through that dip, even on camera, because if you're listening on podcasts, just with your ears, you won't be able to see, but you can go onto YouTube if you want to try to figure it out. The other thing that I was shocked by is it had been months since I touched this episode and I just edited it today. And I was like, I really don't look that bad. Like, yeah, my hair's flat. So what? Like, I don't do anything to my hair. It just is my hair. Like now, then, but that's it. And it was a pleasant surprise, but still shocking to realize how much of my perception was morphed by this chemical reaction. As my therapist said, it was dysmorphia. And I'm familiar, not for myself, with body dysmorphia. I'm familiar of what it is, but it's a morphing of reality. So I just wanted to share that. I was freaking out for about 20 minutes. It was very hard. But by the time the podcast ended, I wasn't freaking out anymore. And I was able to continue with my work. It really gave me, that experience with the prednisone really gave me so much more compassion for people who have chemical imbalances and deal with depression. Seriously, if that is you, like I'm almost in tears now because I'm just like, holy crap, hell on earth. I've had situational depression before, but not really chemical depression before. So, whew, all y'all out there, you are super strong. So anyways, with that said, we've got Kareen, who also is an author. She has written 2 books, I believe. One of them, Lead with Value, How Leaders Unleash Their Vision, Empower Their Team, and Evolve Their Business. It's amazing. We talk about the difference between, quote, regular folks and C-suite folks, what the C-suite folks have that you may or may not have if you're not in the C-suite. A whole bunch of other things that I think you're really going to enjoy listening to. If you're listening on the podcast, maybe you want to check it out on YouTube. Maybe not. If you're on YouTube, please put in the comments if you have dealt with depression. And I also want to know if you can spot where I am freaking out. I know it's in the back half, and that's the hint I'll give you. All right. Enjoy the interview. Well, without further ado, it's my joy and pleasure to bring Kareen to the space. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Betsy. I love these type of conversations. So I'm excited to get into it with you.
My favorite thing. I enjoy speaking about intuition more than anything else. So I really love the combination of your work with C-suite people and bring spirituality and healing to the both. I want to get into our regular questions, but before we do, I was thinking you're sort of similar to Wendy on Billionaire. And
Thank
I was
you.
Like, yeah, so I was like, if I'm talking to Wendy, I mean, seriously, that show, I actually was assigned to watch that show by a mentor that I had.
Great.
Yeah. And, out of anyone on the show, like she was the only one that I wanted to talk to. Maybe a lot of people.
No, it was a great character
Yeah.
representation of the power of knowing, but
Mhm.
also the acceptance to have a coach like that on staff
Wow. Yeah.
to make sure your performance and your work is at its best for
Hmm.
a billionaire to be in their decision matrix every day, because that's a lot to decide on every day.
Right.
You really do have to have that support.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you felt connected
Hmm.
to that type of work.
Well, even on top of that, too, seeing what she struggled with, right? Because you're in the
Mm-hmm.
belly of the beast,
Yeah.
right? You're being
Mm-hmm.
paid by the people to sort of have you be the check. That
Yeah.
was really fascinating. So in my work, I teach people how to trust their intuition.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's a lot of toxicity or rewiring that needs to happen to find what is your true self.
Yes.
And I find a lot of people sort of come to me and they think that I've always had the ability to be a award-winning psychic medium and talk to dead
Mm.
people and predict the future. And it's always been easy. And I realize that it's part of my job to, give the inner workings of that and just
Yeah.
to dispel those rumors. I think there's no competition of who's had it worse, but I do think many people will never walk the path that I had to walk through. It's like if I can walk through fire, I can teach other people too.
Sure.
So people will see me and they'll be like, I could never do what she does. And I think there's something in C-suite people that people feel that way about. They're like,
Yeah.
well, they're like that. And I can even just tell you, like, I know the larger truth of this, but I also know there's like logic and statistics to back it up. My bias is, well, C-suite people, not all of them, but a lot of them are narcissists.
Mm.
Like
Mm.
that's like my bias I'm bringing to it. So we can dispel that. But
Yeah, definitely.
I would love for you to, because obviously you're not, you can't teach a narcissist how to have empathy. So you're not working with narcissists.
It's also hard to lead a winning business from a narcissistic stance. There are only such a few that will follow that. So it's short lived if
Mhm.
they are in the C-suite in a narcissist stance. It doesn't work. It works in a dictatorship, but
Mhm.
most businesses don't run successfully in that type of framework.
And I also think it's changing, right? People are aware of it. They're aware of how they can be treated. And if
Yeah, if
they're
you want longevity in your business, right, you need to have collaboration, cohesiveness, communication, connection, all the C words, right, in order for the C-suite to work.
that's such a beautiful synchronicity there.
Yeah.
So what would be, let's take it maybe from a simplistic question
Mm-hmm.
standpoint. What would someone who's never dreamed of being in the C-suite,
Mm.
they might say, I could never be like them because they have this or they're like this. What
Sure.
would you say that is?
Well, I think comparison as a practice will always debilitate you.
Mhm.
So stop comparing is the first thing I would say, and start knowing what it would take if that's the ultimate role you want to play in business. Start to understand the path that that person took to get there. They did not start there. They built themselves to get there. And as I like to say with anyone in my practice that works with me, it's not about what others are doing. It's about what do you want to do for your world and your role and how you choose to lead. And now how can we help you get there?
Mhm.
And so, first of all, drop comparison, right?
Yep.
And then start building your ultimate vision. If C-suite seat is what you want, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that, along with the know-how, the skill set, and an ability to do the job. It is not easy to keep a C-suite role. People don't just trip up into it. It is earned. And just like everything else that is earned, there are steps to take to get there. So I would just tell anybody watching or listening is that if that's an ultimate goal for you, understand the path. And that's with anything, whether it's your C-suite CEO of your own business, like the path that I've taken for myself in my own work that I do. it was because I was in other people's systems, saw how they did it, wasn't really impressed by that. I didn't want to become that, but I saw a model of something that I then could shape into what I wanted to create and become.
I see. I mean, you can basically take everything you said and apply it to, I feel like,
Everything.
Exactly. Yes.
Everything. Yeah.
Yes. I love it.
Yeah.
Again, like an intuition podcast, I feel like, I will say, and I really honestly want to know if you completely disagree with this, because I do believe comparison is the thief of joy.
It is.
I do feel like there is an exception, though, and it's for people who maybe have low self-esteem and don't realize their worth, that they are actually very, I know sometimes they feel like they're way behind, but they're actually ahead of the game, and they need to like look around and be like, oh, wow, like I'm actually a lot further than I thought. It's a tricky thing. It's not like,
it's aspiration is I think what you're talking about. It's like, and the inner knowing of your value, right? So when I wrote my second book, Lead with Value, it was to help people get to the core of like, what is your core value system? What is it that you put out into the world? So you have that as your standing ground to then build upon, because everybody comes to the table with value, every single person. And if you're sitting in self-doubt and not feeling your value, that's the work you need to do, right? And in order to then say, but I am good at these things. Yeah. I am actually, when I show up and I give the best hugs, like I am such a good hugger, like even that has value because someone needed that hug, and there's an exchange there. So I do think what you're talking about when someone's sitting in a low vibe energy of a lack of self-awareness, or even feeling less than because of comparison, that's the thief part.
Yeah.
It's the thief of saying, I am still worthy and I also want to do those things. Like turn it into an and statement, not a but statement.
Yeah.
Right. And then you're able to like grow from there into what it is that you truly want to become.
By all means, I'm not myself, or assuming anyone listening or watching is that they're all trying to be C-suite. But I do think it's a good sort of jump off point. And like we said, you could say what you said that can apply to anything. As you said, it's earned. You have to work towards it. You have to know your core beliefs to get there.
Yeah.
I feel like one of the reasons I haven't been able to digest it enough to really speak about it eloquently yet, but I feel like one of the major blocks that people have to trusting their intuition is they do have to take radical responsibility. They do have to take the hard look. They do have to stop comparing and tearing other people down.
Yeah.
And for some reason, they don't want to. I know there's various reasons. So what do you see in your work? I mean, do people in C-suite still grapple with that?
You're all ready for your vacation. It's really hectic getting here, but you're seated in your airplane seat, looking out the window, and you hear the pilot come on the intercom. Good day, everyone. It's a beautiful day outside, 71 and sunny. As you're aware, to get to where we're going, we need to fly over that mountain range, and sometimes there can be a little bit of turbulence. I'm about 80% sure we'll get there safely. So buckle up, relax, and enjoy your flight. I know that sounds like an absurd situation, but when I put this in context of trusting yourself and trusting your intuition, and I ask people on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most, how much do you trust yourself? 8 is a very high score when asking people. So if you fall on a 2 to 4 range, you're totally not alone. Now picture this other scenario. You're out to lunch with a friend, and the friend says that they've been having a really difficult time learning French. You ask the logical question, are you taking a class? And their answer is, well, I'm taking Spanish. Guess what? If you want to trust yourself deeply, if you want to have an easier time making decisions, break through blocks, connect with people, know who to connect with, when, there's a class for that. I've actually helped thousands of people truly trust themselves. in uncertainty, in times of doubt or fear, shame or guilt. And I have a free masterclass called Intuition 101, How to Trust Yourself in Uncertain Times, that will tell you everything you need to know in order to learn to trust yourself. The link is in the show notes. However, you can also go to howtotrustyourintuition.com, all spelled out.
I'd say the most common grappling is what we all kind of face sometimes when it's a role that requires so much of us, is the imposter syndrome that most people feel in a role. And I've coached so many executives, and imposter syndrome comes up all the time that holds them back from stepping into what their intuition is telling them to do next, right? But because maybe they faltered with another arena and they don't want to see that happen again, right? And so it created doubt. And so their voice inside with me one-on-one, they're telling me all the things. It's all the whispers and what they truly desire. But then when I challenge them, now bring it to the room, bring it to the table. Have you expressed it to the people who need to hear it? And we work on the why haven't you, so that we can make that clearing and say, try anyway. Right? Like, you have to try. You do not know unless you try and you say it and you speak it out into the world and you act in it, if it actually can be true for you or not. And that's how you dismiss the imposter syndrome of it all, because you're actually in action. It's towards it and you're knowing, right? So part of intuition and sitting in your intuition is also the knowing in your heart, spirit, sacral energy that, yes, this is how I need to step forward to manifest what it is that I want next. And less about the reaction of others, more about the knowing in self that I at least tried.
Yeah. There's two gigantic things that keep coming up. So I am intellectually very familiar with imposter syndrome and how much it affects people. And how widespread it is. And I know that people suffering with it, one of the best remedies, besides working with someone in the context like with you, is hearing that super successful people, leaders, and the most famous names also suffer from that.
Yep.
I also know that I've never had that. So it's one of those things that it doesn't freak me out, but I think about it. I'm like, okay, well, why haven't I had that? I do think there's two possible reasons, and one of them is the big thing we're going to get to, but not to like minimize it. It may have to do with me being non-neurotypical, and always having to be told to fit into something that isn't me. So, and the masking that already happens, I have a feeling that has a lot to do with it.
Are you saying that the unlearning of the masking and just standing in your truth has to do with it? Or
no,
is it?
I think it's because I just don't logic and reason like other people.
Got it. Okay.
And I think this next part dovetails nicely into it. I'm like 23 minutes into the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what you were saying. You're like, you do it despite. You don't give any fucks. You go into the room and you do what your inner knowing is. And like 15 minutes in, I was like, okay, my students, they're going to love this because they do get caught in that perpetual loop from hell, is what he says.
Sure.
And I'm like, that's probably why I've always been, since I discovered it and hung a shingle out, as they say, been excellent at psychic medium readings, because I've never cared. I care deeply about people. Right. I care deeply about the service that I'm providing.
Yeah.
But there's just this lack of caring of if I get it right or wrong. I mean, I do have anxiety that I quickly recognize. I'm like, okay, great. That's there. All right. Yeah. Spirit, come in. And in fact, I'll just share quickly. I'd love to hear your response. There's this one Q&A that we spent an hour and 20 minutes talking about one of my students, I don't teach people how to become psychic mediums. I teach them how to trust their intuition. But some people are already professional tarot readers or psychic mediums, and they come to the course, and we spent an hour and a half. This one person was talking about needing to get reviews and needing to post all of the time. And I was like, okay, but why? What is that doing? And I understand there's Yelp and Google reviews, and I have those things, but that's not really what the work is about.
Yeah.
And how is that influencing when you're actually showing up? And I was just we're doing some coaching and stuff, but I was like, I've never really cared about this and been on all these different top 10 lists. This is back last February, so almost a year ago. We got off the Q&A around like 8:30 at night. And I just checked my email like one last time. And in my inboxes, we've just awarded you Best Psychic Medium of 2022.
Nice.
And I'm honored, and I'm not disrespecting any of those awards, but I also was like, thanks. And this doesn't matter.
Right. So you're detached. You're detached from the outcome. You're more attached to the work, right?
Yeah.
And for any form of success or the confidence to step into what you're trying to achieve, to detach yourself from the outcome is definitely a practice for those who are sitting in too much weight on the outcome, right? It's and here's the deal. It's like if you came up in any traditional education, right? Going to school, being graded, being compared to by the other students, like making sure you showed up a certain way in order to belong, you learned imposter syndrome and comparison at a very young age. And it was guised as competitiveness to get certain people ahead. But it's really a broken system. It's scary to me that it still even exists, because we are way more involved on how we show up in the world, and also have so much value to add no matter where we're showing up. And I think if what you've mastered, or the way your brain works and how you have just described the detachment to the outcome, because you have so much joy and pride in the actual work and the doing, that it doesn't matter what the results are, and you will be celebrated because you're showing up fully. It's how you help others embody that. That's the winning formula, right? Like that, and that's what you do through your education programs and your training and your coaching. And I think that that's what most people have to break, the cycle of being patted on the back for the A+ when they didn't really learn anything. And then when they actually want to do something that is true to them, figuring out, well, how do I actually find the celebration in me for actually trying, versus that A+ that I might get if I might do it, and all the doubt that comes with that.
You just walked me into the next thing I wanted to bring up. So I was in Q&A last night, and there was somebody who was raised with just the concept of excellence just over her head, like just bashed. Like that's where she was.
You must be this in order to be loved and seen.
And even safe,
Well, it's never safe.
Well,
but,
exactly.
But because that safety is not in that construct.
Yep.
No,
exactly.
It's just about acceptance. It's not about safety.
Yep. And we came to that breakthrough.
Good.
Again, just using the C-suite as an example. I mean, we could talk about any group of people, but what we sort of went through last night was she finally realized that she got to make decisions based on what she wanted. Like she
beautiful.
Never, I mean, everything opened up.
Good.
And it feels like your work somewhat takes people who are showing up in their role and maybe disconnected from their passion, their joy, bringing, healing or change or the desire they want to see to the world. And I imagine that's what you're dealing with, is like, well, wait a minute, I get to be powerful and I get to do what I want, or I get to be powerful and make the positive change that I want. And what does that look like? I mean, I saw it last night, but like you said, like why didn't you have this intuition? Why didn't you bring it in? Like, I think that connects to it too. Like, talk about that if you could.
So the skills really are in the self-awareness and self-development in order to lead others at your best, which is really what all these roles, whether you're a manager, managing 2 people, or a C-suite leader having hundreds and thousands of people under you, depending on how large the organization is, you have to do the work to be self-connected first in order to stand in it all that's coming your way. So the example you just shared, it was really a self-awareness moment for her to realize, wait, but I'm actually in control of my destiny. Those constructs that I was raised under of excellence were not my constructs. There was what I had to do to belong somewhere for a period of time. And I always love to give people who are stuck in a childhood story, basically, like the constructs that others put upon us, or the family unit, or the culture, whatever that looks like, that you're an adult now.
Yeah.
You get to make your decisions, like reserve the right to change your mind, do the things you need to do as a sovereign adult. You have that right in most countries. Not all countries, unfortunately, have that, but in our country here in the US, we do. And that gives them this space to explore, right? So whether you're a C-suite leader or a manager, it's really about that self-work, because I always say your business is 100% a reflection of how much you are personally growing. Yes. So if your business won't grow if you're not growing.
I say the same thing. Yep.
Yeah. And so you have to have that self-mastery in order to then show up in the room and create. And self-mastery means you are putting yourself in the story as well.
Yeah.
Right? Like subservient leadership, or the way to just I have so many people that sit in suffering of like the doing and the job and the system that does not actually feed their soul. It's just work, and they don't have the soulful life outlined, So sometimes we're like, okay, that's means to an end. Like, this is where you are employed. This is where you're earning. How can we kind of compartmentalize that time there and then fill up the rest of your life? What does that give you in order for the rest of your life to be lit up and bring you that fulfillment and joy that you're looking for?
Yeah.
Each circumstance is different, but those are the things that I always look for. It's like, where's the self-mastery work happening? Because it always starts with you. Your joy starts with you. Your fulfillment starts with you. You cannot get it from anything outside of who you are.
I just want to have that on repeat. I mean, It's so great. It's so great. I love your energy. It's like your friend who tells it like it is, with just this unconditional love. And it's like, hey, this isn't scary. You get to choose. Like, let's do it. It's really, really fun. So thank you for that.
Sure.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
That's why my favorite people tend to be entrepreneurs, because there's no one to blame. And if you do wind up blaming others, then you're not an entrepreneur after a while.
It won't sustain, for sure. I mean, I've been in business for over 12 years now. It's not like, this game is new to me. And I also started to shift into entrepreneurial advisement and coaching because of the mindset required to be a successful entrepreneur. You have to get out of your own way.
Yeah.
You have to.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is unknown. If you're the ideas person, you don't really know the construct of how to make your business a business.
Yes.
That's where a lot of the trip up happens too. So in that dialogue and the awareness, the willingness to have the conversation is so key to be solution oriented,
Oh, absolutely. And, involving being part of the story. Every single reading that I give is also a reading for me. I've known this the whole time, which means, the more readings I'm giving, the more time I have to spend, pruning and growing those new things.
Good.
There was a period, and it was like the last year or two of my marriage, which I wasn't fully aware was toxic, where I fell out of love with readings because it was the same reading over and over, a different person, the same
message.
Yeah. And I knew that it was accurate. I mean, it was wildly accurate, but I was just like, hey, I could just put a record on for these people.
Yeah.
And then a year and a half ago, when I got orphaned by my entire biological family, which wound up being a gift, but required a lot of healing, I fell wildly back in love with readings because each one is so different than the last one, and new things after 15 years of doing this. Things that have never happened in readings are happening, and it's a joy. It's like, oh, I'm finally back to me. So
it's fun being the conduit, right? Like I say in my practice, I'm the conduit to help people figure out what they want matters, and that there are ways to achieve it. And that I use intuition all the time in my practice, and I'm getting downloads, and I know there are things that pass through me that I'm like, where did that come from? Because and it's beautiful. It was really a great shift for me to be more open to hearing those messages, to deliver to my clients directly, and to see it land, just like the moment you had last night with your client. It's like when it lands, you're like, okay, that was the beautiful value exchange we just had in this session. I was valued in the sense that I'm the conduit of the messenger for you, but also you valued yourself in receiving it, and now you're going to act in it.
Well, let's talk about your intuition. I mean, you could talk about really coming into being the conduit, start there, or previous. I would love to know how you learned, or if you're still learning, to trust that information that comes seemingly out of nowhere with no logical information to back it up.
When I graduated with a BA in psychology in 2002, attachment work was only applied to children. Now, in 2023, it seems to be all the rage for a reason, because knowing your attachment type, there are 3 main types: avoidant, anxious, and secure, really changes your life. And if you listen to the podcast where I talked about how I lost $100,000 from a spiritual, quote unquote, spiritual coach, the silver lining to that experience was me discovering the root of a lot of my issues. I was anxiously attached. I had anxious attachment. At the very end of that terrible, terrible situation, yes, it was traumatic, I came across Maya Diamond's work. And it was working through her program that literally rewired my brain from anxious to secure. This is how I made it through all of my major transitions over the past 2 years and discovered so much about myself. Now, if you don't know about attachment work, don't feel bad. Here's a typical situation, in fact, the most common situation that happens with these attachment styles. Person A and person B are in a relationship. They care about one another. Person A reaches out to person B, doesn't hear back right away. So then maybe sends another text or another gesture, which further pushes person B away. Both people get anxious, both people get resentful, and eventually they might break up. I was in that situation more often than I'd like to remember. I married the wrong person, I had toxic family relationships, and had no idea until I took Maya's program. So, the link for a free consultation is in the show notes, and I'm so happy to offer all the podcast listeners. If you sign up for her program, you will get a free session worth $500 with Maya Diamond herself, one-on-one. That's just for How to Trust Your Intuition podcast listeners.
I would say that, I focus more on my connected self to all the realms, really, because I know how gifting it is to be able to have that. And so I have my own daily rituals to make sure that I am taking care of me first thing in the morning, and connecting to me so that I can serve all day long and have conversations like this and work with my clients and all the things, but make sure that I'm staying centered in it. So even in self-care, listening to your intuition is like, it's the first marker, I would say. in guiding you on what are the things you actually need, and then listening for how to solve for that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it is a little bit more sleep, like, or maybe it is a walk, or maybe it is a conversation with a friend and lots of laughs, right? But trusting in what we're hearing matters,
Mm-hmm.
and then following through with it. And
Yeah.
it wasn't always like that. I
Yeah.
would say there was a definite because it got muffled, right? Like, to belong in other people's ecosystems, our intuition gets muffled because we have to belong for a period of time to survive.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're in any sort of form of survival mode, it will muffle the voices or the messages for us. And for me, in my own self-healing and going through the trauma and the misaligned relationships, the disconnect in, belief systems, all the things when you're dealing with other people and their demands, slowly got me closer to sitting in my intuition deeper and deeper, because every time you peel the layer of what's not working for you, you realize the truth was always coming to you and your intuition's always telling you. But until you sit and actually see it, hear it, believe it, do it, right?
Yes.
Like, don't know. So it's been a lot of cycles. Of course, it's always a work in progress on fine tuning it, but I would say I really do sit in an intuitive state most of the time. Especially when I'm interacting with others, but now more so the mastery for myself, so that I can continue to manifest the life that I know is meant for me, and also be someone of an impact to help others do the same.
Right. I love how you mentioned specifically if you're in any sort of survival mode. That was something as an adult, I was never, not that it's a negative place, it's a hard place to be in, but it's neutral as any place. But as an adult, I'd never been brought back down to actual survival until I was completely, pushed out. And luckily I'd had, 20 years of spiritual practice at that time. So I was able to little bits and bobs hold on to that, and I had my beliefs which hadn't shifted. But it wasn't until I'd spent 8 months to a year in that healing space that I came to, I already knew about it, but just as a working model, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's not the perfect system, but the baseline is safety, security, housing, food. And if you don't have those things secure, you don't have time to meditate. You have to make sure you have a roof over your head. You have to make sure that even if that person has toxic chemicals in their house, but it's a roof, you're probably going to go stay there, and that might muffle your intuition or what have you. So I think that's important for people to realize. And it's this part that I've always intuitively understood when people come to me and they say, oh, I want a reading, but I can't afford it, or I want to take the course and I can't afford it. I always say to them, I know that it happens at the perfect time, because if you don't have at least that much expendable income, that income should be spent on the things that you need to survive and so
feel safe.
Exactly. And so sometimes you have health insurance, you can get therapy, and that can help move you forward and things like that. But that notion of if you're in survival mode, I didn't really make that click until this past year. So
how it can because I find that, like, even the scarcity mindset, right? Like this is part of a lot of people's survival, or can be part of their survival mechanism, is the not enough story, or the how can I'm not worthy, all the things. It just muffles the messages that are meant for you. And I do think I would want to anybody who is in survival mode, it's actually the best time to have a meditative practice,
right?
Because that is free.
And
it also is something that will give you self connection, that then allows you to listen to the voices to get out of survival mode, right? Like, that's where the true healing actually happens. because you can find the financial means, you can earn whatever you need to earn, but you could also lose it all tomorrow and have to rebuild it again. And if you're not solid in you, then it becomes even harder to survive it.
Well, I think that that's why I was able to survive, and why my team of helpers is like floored with how quickly I was able to bounce back and thrive again. And it's like, I had all the practices that would help me. Also, I'll go back to what you said, because I don't know if you saw the smirk on my face, but you're like, your intuition may say, go get a cup of coffee or take a nap or go for a walk. And those are like basically the three things that like always come up when I talk about it. And the cup of coffee is not free, but the walk is, having a cup of water, going to talk to somebody a lot of times is free, going into a shop and talking to a nice shopkeeper. Those are the things also that if you're in survival mode, you can do that help get you connected. And who knows what the result is of going for a walk. You never know.
Yeah. And just be careful on the scrolling is all I have to say. Because a lot of people lean into the busyness is making them feel worthy or like they spent their time a certain way. But what you're actually absorbing in that messaging really does impact your intuition also. Like it will make you have thoughts that are not yours because you witnessed something that you probably didn't need to see, but you don't have control of your feeds anymore. So it's like, be careful of how long you spend on that, and also what you're taking away from it,
Yeah. It's funny. I mean, I think anyone I come into contact to is very similar to me. And I say, I'm one of the most sensitive people on the planet. And so I have, I'm a overcoming, self-confessed control freak, right? So like, I can let go of the things I don't have control over, but with the feed, I like have curated that so much. Like if you go on my Instagram, I'm not following anyone.
Yeah.
And so there is no feed, but when I press the search button only shows me cat videos, interspecies friendships, and then just other, relationship turn-ons and the other stuff that I'm sort of interested in. And I just got to say this because it's a kind of a funny story. So on Facebook with the reels, I think reels are cute, but you do not have control there at all. It's like your Facebook or the TikTok for you, which I would never touch because I don't want to just walk into a pile of what and have it all over me. So I would be watching those for a little while, and I'm very aware that Facebook is running different algorithms on me and doing experiments on me and seeing how long I'll stay on there. So my reels were abandoned houses, which I liked, and interspecies friendships. And so I would watch them. And then one day, out of nowhere, there was no more of those. And it was just all the QAnon stuff. And I was like, this is terrible.
Propaganda.
It was horrible. It was horrible. Yeah. And so Facebook quickly got that I was not watching, I was not liking, I was hopping off. And I don't even spend more than like 2.5 minutes on there in the first place. They don't really have a lot of data to work with. There's some data. And then since I just was like, well, I'm not going on reels at all because that's a bunch of crap. Then all of a sudden it just switched to comedians. And I was like, well, I like these comedians, so I'm going to watch it. And it wasn't like terrible toxic stuff, but there's literally no more abandoned houses. And there's like very few, things on there. And I'm like, this is just, to your point,
it's out of your control.
As much as I can control some feeds, some of it absolutely not. And I don't think people realize that. I hear a lot of people more so like just complaining about it, and just being who I am and being an entrepreneur for so long, I just move on to the next. But
I think what the wave of coming up now is more curated communities like that are run by specific brands or run by specific business owners that literally have the essence of the environment you want to be a part of, I think is what's going to be coming up next. Like,
I hope so.
I know I'm launching one because I need to create a space that I enjoy showing up in and don't feel like this is wasted energy of being in someone else's environment that I really don't want to hang out. I don't want to see those things. I don't want to absorb them. I don't want to interact with them. I don't mind some things for entertainment, but I have to keep it very short.
Oh, yeah.
And I know that there's a lot of suffering out there where it's very easy to distract yourself.
Yeah.
And so finding the key communities to join where you're being lifted up matters, you know? So if there's that energy of anyone listening or watching that's like, I don't know how to connect with myself. Well, get off the social networks, the marketing networks, because that's what they are, and connect into the podcasts like this, or connect into the communities of people you admire, and really start to build the environment around you that represents who you are. You know, it's
and in real life too.
Yeah.
In real life too. That's beautiful. Can you share a little bit more about what you're building? Or
yeah, so I'm about to launch. I'm launching hopefully by the end of this month, but a whole new way of connecting with my entrepreneur clients, and then also a new podcast will be coming out later this year. But the whole brand or is going to be called Hey Kareen. I love giving on the spot advice, tools, tips, methods, so that people can just jump into what it is they want. Like, remove excuses, remove obstacles. What do you need? Let's move it forward. You know, like, that is my true energy. And I was finding that out of my coaching containers, and also, you know, I call myself a luxury item. To work with me one-on-one is not, it requires an investment, because I'm helping 6-7 figure companies scale. I'm also making sure that there are frameworks in place that entrepreneurs can learn, but not everybody can really jump into that, you know, out the gate. So I was like, how can I be more approachable, but also impactful? And so Hey Kareen will be launched in February. It's a group monthly membership for actual on the spot coaching. So you get access through Voxer, and I will be talking to you. It's not like canned text messages and all the things. I'll have office hours, go through everyone's questions, fire hose it back what's needed, and really help walk alongside people who are in action and want the guidance and support. But then the beauty of it is that they get it from each other as well. You know, so it's a curated community. And then the podcast is the same. That's the free version, right? Like, where common questions that are asked, here are the answers, and then I bring guests on to really dive into some of the ways to help you move forward. So that's coming up, when I'm super excited about it.
That's very exciting. It sounds like fun for you and really valuable and healing for them. That's great.
It is
awesome. Well, we have 2 more questions for you. You can take them in any order that you want. One is, can you tell us about a time when you did not trust your intuition and what happened? And perhaps a time when you did trust your intuition, possibly despite logic saying something different, and what happened?
Okay, so anytime I don't trust my intuition, it either shows up in a health issue or something breaks, like around me. That's why I so lean into it really hard. But I would say most of, like, the first hits of, like, really realizing, oh, I shoulda, like, when I should have over myself, it means that I didn't trust my intuition, you know? So I would say it would start in, you know, I'll talk in just career management side of things, only because I think we don't trust it enough when we're doing things to earn. The money can kind of muffle, like, what's true to us. And sometimes you have to stick through the hard, you know, to prove your skill set, et cetera, especially in your 20s, when you're just kind of coming up into the world of figuring out who you are and, like, what you want to put out in the world. But I remember being in a job that really I overextended myself in, and my health was just a hot mess, like a hot mess. And I was living with and I knew, like, the voices were like, quit. You know, like, the intuition was like, you don't need this, quit. You deserve better, quit. But I was for survival needed the money, and I didn't have the exit strategy yet, and I didn't know, and I just kept feeling like the harder I would work, they will see it and they will reward me, right? Like it's that hamster wheel thing that we were taught and trained. Yeah. And then and it really went to a point where I mean I had to go to the emergency room. Like it was affecting my health like no other. And I had a roommate at the time that every morning was like, quit your job. Like she was even the messenger telling me like, you are not yourself anymore. Quit, quit, quit. And I was like, I can't until I have this like backup plan. I don't know what to do. And then finally I had this one conversation with my boss at the time. A new boss had come in. I was very excited. I was like, maybe it'll be better if I just tell this person all the things I'm doing. And then, and I explained to her what I was hired for, what I was doing. And she said, I don't know what you're complaining about. What you're doing is your job. Just keep doing it. And she was just like, slam me down. I was like, well, if you don't have a growth path for me,
right?
What am I here? I was 23. This is the start of my career. So glass ceiling, 23.
Wow.
No, thank you. So in that, literally, I think the conversation was a Thursday. Over the weekend, had my like freak out moments, crying, like the come to self conversations where it was like, you have to quit because there's nothing that any limitations of other people that they're putting on you. Like she doesn't own me, like it was all that kind of talk, but also the finally listening to the messages that had been coming. And I that Monday resigned, gave them my 2-week notice because I was professional about it. But the elation of just sitting in that truth of like, I am more valuable than what I'm being valued at. And so it's time to move on. And trusting my intuition, not knowing I didn't have the backup plan because I was like, I will figure out the net. I work it out with my roommate that maybe she can front rent for a little bit while I figure out the next job. I knew that I had skills to offer and basically figure that out, but also had to trust in myself and trust my intuition of there is something better out there for you. You just have to leap for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And did your health have a marked improvement after you left?
Definitely. What's interesting? I did a lot of artwork at that time. The night before I resigned and that weekend, I did some artwork just to expressively get things out, and I had done this drawing and I wish I had it. I think it got ruined in a flood, but it was literally as if I was drawing the devil. Like it was this dark red, black and white, like intense, like just intense eyes and like all this evil energy. And then the day after I quit, it was this beautiful flowers and like magical, like floating in the air. It was just hilarious. The juxtaposition of what was, going on within me. And that was the true sensation health-wise, where I could actually focus on my health. I had overextended myself so much for that job that now I was able to sleep better. I could actually have meals when I needed to. I started seeing a homeopathic doctor to try to like clear things out and cleanse because everything was so toxic. Yeah. So time was given back to me to heal. And then I found this amazing job that skyrocketed my career, within like 2 months later, I think it was. Right. Where I grew tremendously and started my executive career in my 20s. Like I hit certain markers very quickly. And I was replaced in my former job that I quit with 2 men, and they paid them 3 times as much, like the combined salary, because of how much my former boss was threatened by what I was doing.
Wow. So roll my eyes far enough back.
I know, but it was just the times, and it was a female boss. Like it was a woman that I actually worked for. So it was like this whole construct of trust your intuition. The system is not the right system for you. Yep. And then the system I stepped into, amazing. Like it literally was game changer. And I was very selective on who I chose to work with next to make sure I trusted in my gut that this business, this company, this person, this leader was going to be right for me and hear me and see me and not take advantage of me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you trusted your gut on that decision. Did you also have indicators, green lights, green flags that person would listen to you and value you, or was it simply a gut thing?
In the new company I joined, it's so wild. So I was 20. So this is like almost 25 years ago. Like, I mean, this is no 20 years, let's say. I'm like, I don't even know how old I am. Anyway, in that interview, what's great, the reason why I bring that up is we are still friends today.
Wow.
So in that conversation, I remember how nervous I was going in for the interview, but also like I really needed the job because I had been kind of like at the tail end of like how much I could have stretched myself before I had to ask for more help, And I remember sitting and feeling his energy. Like there was this fire that this man has and still does, like, and I enjoy it even to this day. But he was like really about it, and his questions were so poignant, and I was just like rocking it with him, like we were just sparring back and forth, both from the East Coast. At this time, we're living in San Francisco. I was working in San Francisco, so the energy, most of the people you come across is not the same.
It is not. It is not.
But he was an East Coaster, so he and I like saw eye to eye and got it, and he liked my rhythm, and he, and it was an entry-level position in a certain part of the company that was just getting built up. So everything was new, but we really clicked and I felt really good about it. And I was hopeful.
Yeah.
My ego wasn't in a place back then where I was like, I nailed it, and I got it. I was just hopeful. I was like, oh my gosh, please give me this opportunity. So what happened when they placed the offer, because he wanted me to join his team, he lowballed me, like, the salary piece, right? And I was like, wow, that's a cut from what I had, but the opportunity for me to grow here, that's where my intuition was like, go with the growth decision. It's not about the money. You will make the money. It's about, can you grow in this company? And for my assessment, I also knew someone else that worked there. I could see with this particular person I'd be working for, growth was available to me. And it's also up to me to show up to want to grow. But I felt like the construct of the company was a good fit. And I trusted the take the cut and just start, and see what happens.
Well, that's a good how to, when you trusted your intuition. Do you have another story about this was totally not logical and I trusted it anyhow and went for it? I mean, that was a good one, so I'm not discounting.
No, that's a great one. I'm trying to think if, because now that I tap into it more, I feel like I live in that often where I'm just
even a small one, right? Even just the other day, I had this deadline and I knew I had 5 minutes, but I went to have a cup of coffee anyhow. And it was the best decision, those are big,
I'd say, the best hits that I get, it's when someone comes to mind and then I reach out to them and they're like, how did you know? I was thinking
say, how did you know?
And like those are my most favorite intuitive hit moments. Or I'll get this message for them and I'll just like text it to them, just sending you so much love right now. Like, just know you're you matter, what you want matter, whatever it is, like those type of love hits kind of thing. When I'm just being that, again, conduit to connect, like those are my favorite.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. Even that like warms my heart.
Right.
That's also a really good one to sort of lead people with, because when somebody comes in and either they don't know anything about intuition, or they don't think they're intuitive, or they think they might be, or they don't know they can learn it. The entryway, usually everyone has one of those stories where they thought of someone and then ping, the text comes, or they did that. They're like, I don't know why, I just felt like telling you I love you. And you're just like, oh my gosh, like, thank you, how did you know? So many people have that and they may discount it, they may not value it. So the fact that you chose that example as high value, which I agree with, I mean, it changes lives, it keeps us connected, it's the glue,
it raises the vibration.
And everyone has access to that. So that's gorgeous. I love that you gave that example. Thank you.
And like, remove the filtering, you guys. Like, if this happens to you and you're like, I don't want to bother them, you're never bothering anybody if you're expressing your love for them. Just share it. They need to hear it. Like, it's not a bother. Like, just do it. We need to raise the vibration more on how we care for each other, because it is so needed. It's just so needed.
Yeah, yep, exactly. Well, I could listen to you speak all day. So I think that's a good indicator for your new container you're launching and your
Thank you.
podcast. So, I hope that people, when you launch those, that they'll come to that and check you out.
Love that.
Yeah. Anything else you want to promote before we close it up today?
No, I mean, I thank you for having me on the show. It's just been awesome to connect with you in this way. And if anybody, wants to connect with me after listening, you can go to KareenWalsh.com/links, LINKS. And there's all my freebies, like when I'm going to talk live, all the things I'm offering are all there. I have some really good workbooks. If you're sitting in a struggle on like, what do you do next, or how do you create the life that you desire, there's the Strategic Life Planning Mastery Workbook that you can download. And I hear so many winning results from people who go through that. So,
That's
but
fantastic.
reach out.
Yeah.
You could also follow me on Insta,
Okay.
Kareen Z Walsh, and connect there, because that's where I play and show most of what's going on with me.
That's great. And those links will be in the show notes for everyone to click on as well. So thank you, Kareen. This was a joy and pleasure to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
How to Trust Your Intuition, the podcast, is written, produced, and created by me, your host, Betsy LaFay. Music provided by Ben Talmy. If you don't want to be like that pilot that is 80% sure you'll get to your next destination safely, and you want to take the right class to learn the right language, and guess what? Intuition is a language. Head over to howtotrustyourintuition.com. I hope this podcast has been helpful to you. If it has, please forward it to a friend who you think it could also make a difference for. There's something that you can do for me and everyone else who listens to this podcast as well. If you hit subscribe, you'll never miss another episode. It'll also help the show get to other people. And of course, I know you've heard other podcast hosts say this before, but it's totally true. If you leave us a 5-star rating and a review, it helps other people like you discover this podcast. We all need to learn to trust our intuition. So, hit subscribe, give us a 5-star review, and write a little blurb while you're there. Your intuition will thank you.